Madam President, today, when a genuine window of opportunity has opened up for a political settlement of the Ukrainian crisis, what we must be talking about first and foremost is not proclamations, but diplomacy. Trilateral negotiations are presently underway between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States. Talks are being held in Abu Dhabi and Geneva. The delegations are working under challenging conditions, fully aware of their historical responsibility for the outcome. This is a moment that calls for quiet, restraint, and respect for the negotiation process. Instead, we're witnessing blatant disregard for the diplomatic efforts of those countries who are investing political capital into the settlement, primarily the United States, as well as the personal efforts of President Donald Trump's administration aimed at finding a compromise. What is particularly cynical is that on February 17th, at the very moment when the delegations of the three countries were headed to Geneva for another round of talks, the armed forces of Ukraine unleashed 151 unmanned aerial vehicles at civilian facilities, primarily in Russia's southern regions. In just 1 week from February 9 to 15th, shelling involving the use of 2,500 munitions injured 147 civilians. 126 people were wounded, including 6 minors, and 21 people were killed. The strikes caused power supply disruptions affecting at least 454,000 people in the Belgorod, Bryansk, Zaporizhia, and Kursk regions. Is such conduct in line with the declared commitment to de-escalation? Does it create the atmosphere of trust needed to advance the talks? If the true goal is really peace, then actions must corroborate words rather than contradict them. If the Kyiv regime were truly interested in achieving lasting peace, it would focus its efforts on diplomacy, on seeking mutually acceptable solutions, on working out durable security guarantees for both Russia and Ukraine, rather than initiating yet another politicized vote as part of the resumed 11th emergency special session of the UN General Assembly, which has been reconvened without justification. The very logic behind convening the emergency special session rested on the assumption that the Security Council was unable to fulfill its primary responsibility of maintaining international peace and security. Yet, exactly 1 year ago, the UN Security Council expressed its position on Ukraine by adopting Resolution 2774, reaffirming the need for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. This raises a legitimate question. If the Security Council is fulfilling its role and negotiation efforts are underway, what is the basis for bringing back today's format, and what is its real purpose? It is clear that those who initiated the resumption of the ESS are not interested in a political settlement of the Ukrainian crisis or in sustainable peace. Rather, they're interested in using this political instrument to exert pressure on Russia. However, actions such as this cannot influence the actual outcome of the negotiations, nor can they change the situation on the ground. We have also consistently stated that we cannot consider the resolutions adopted previously as part of this session to be balanced or conducive to a settlement. All of them are one-sided. They contain unrealistic demands, and they only replicate Kyiv's political narrative. A year ago, an attempt was made in this very room to effectively legitimize elements of Zelensky's so-called peace formula. In December, an initiative on Ukrainian children was brought forward, one filled with inaccurate data, one that ignored real facts and practical efforts made by both Russia and Ukraine to reunite families. Attempts are being made to artificially replace peace efforts with endless resolutions, with each new non-consensus product being portrayed as the will of the global majority. Distinguished colleagues, today you have been presented with yet another text that essentially continues the same line. The draft resolution is titled Support for Lasting Peace in Ukraine, but its content focuses primarily on the demand for an immediate and complete cessation of hostilities. A ceasefire in itself can be an important element of a settlement, but it is not an end in itself. History knows many examples when a hasty truce that did not address the root causes of the conflict turned into just a pause before a new round of violence. It is clear that Kyiv, facing serious difficulties on the front line, as well as dwindling support from its Western sponsors, is primarily interested in a pause so that it can regroup and rearm. Moreover, this resolution, just like all the previous flawed products of the General Assembly on this topic, cites the UN Charter selectively. It highlights the principle of sovereignty and territorial integrity, but only in relation to one country. And where is the mention of another fundamental principle, the right of peoples to self-determination? Where is the reference to the need to respect human rights and fundamental freedoms for all, regardless of race, gender, language, or religion? For 8 years after the unconstitutional coup of 2014 in Ukraine, the civilian population of Donbass was subjected to systematic pressure, restrictions on their language rights, and a military operation that was presented as an anti-terrorist one. And today we see that even those guarantees for Russian-speaking citizens that are enshrined in the Constitution of Ukraine remain mere words on paper. The words comprehensive, just, and lasting peace sound appealing as a statement, but these words must not obscure an attempt to entrench one-sided approaches in UN decisions. Peace cannot be just if it is interpreted solely through the lens of one party's demands while completely ignoring the legitimate concerns of the other. It cannot be comprehensive if it does not address issues of security and the right to use one's native language and practice one's religion freely. And it certainly cannot be lasting if the proposed solutions do not provide for a balance of interests and mutual guarantees. A genuinely sustainable solution is possible only through equal, respectful dialogue without accusations and without imposing pre-made solutions. Particular attention should be paid to the statement in the text regarding continued attacks against the civilian population of Ukraine. Every objective and sensible delegation knows that Russia does not carry out deliberate strikes on civilians. Every human life is important to us, in contrast to the practices employed by Ukrainian troops, which systematically use drones and artillery against civilian targets. Distinguished colleagues, do not let yourselves be fooled. What you have before you is not an instrument of peace. It is an instrument of politicization. No matter what kind of attractive diplomatic packaging it might be wrapped in, its true purpose is to create yet another round of accusations that will then be used as a tool to exert pressure. Meanwhile, Zelensky's regime and its European handlers continue to need numbers that they can later present as evidence of unwavering support. You have a choice. You can support a document that ignores the complexity of the conflict, interprets the norms of the UN Charter in a one-sided manner, and creates obstacles to negotiations. Or you can allow the negotiators to finish the work they have started. The Russian Federation will vote against this General Assembly draft resolution, and as well as any of its standalone paragraphs if they are put to a vote, because this Ukrainian text cannot be fixed up and corrected. We urge every other state to do the same. Every vote against is a vote in favor of searching for sustainable solutions rather than yet another round of political rhetoric. Thank you for your attention.